I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby, here with Mark Ford, the executive producer of Where Is Wendy Williams, the Lifetime multi-part documentary series that takes a turn, Mark. And I think one of the things that's so fascinating about this film is that it's not the film you set out to make. So I'm curious as to what it's like, just from a filmmaking perspective, when the film that you set out to make is not the one that you end up making.
Well, I think it's safe to say that no one who joined the team on this project expected it to be the project that it turned out to be. And when you're in the middle of it, you're really just talking to each other every single day about what is it that we're capturing? What should we be capturing? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Communicating with Wendy, with her management, with her family eventually, because it took a while for them to really get involved and lean into the project. So it was confusing, complex, always interesting, because Wendy had some days where she was amazing and then other days where we really didn't think it was appropriate to film with her. So it was, what you see in the final product happened over about a year. So it was a long span of time. And, at the time when we began filming, we had no idea what was wrong with her, but we knew something was. And so the film became a journey and an exploration in some ways for the filmmakers to determine what is going on here and should this be a film or not. We were asking ourselves that question all the way throughout, all the way up to delivery, honestly. But ultimately, we felt that the film would do much more good for Wendy and her family by giving them a platform and just simply showing the truth of her situation, which became quite scary, and the film was worried about what would happen if we disappeared and weren't there to kind of be with her on a daily basis. So in the end, in a long way to answer your question, it was a one of a kind, and I'm sure we'll never encounter another project like this. But we just tried to, approach it with as much compassion and honesty, on a daily basis that we could.
Well, and I think that's also, a credit to the film, because I think one of the things that goes completely uncovered and affects so many families is the concept of dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's related dementia or, what Wendy was struggling with. And I have to admit, as a viewer, I was taken quite aback by actually seeing what dementia looks like. And I'm curious, at what point in the process did that even occur to you that maybe that's what we were looking at?
Because none of us are medical doctors, we could never really know until the family revealed that they had, learned about that diagnosis when she was in her care. But even they, I think, were a little bit questioning, and members of her family had different opinions about whether that diagnosis was accurate. And this is, again, towards the very end of our filming. Towards the beginning, we were under the impression that Wendy was recovering from some addiction issues. She's been very open about her alcohol abuse in the past, and we were under the impression that had been taking a toll on her, but that she had been getting it under control and had gone in and out of rehab a couple of times while we were in conversations with her. At the very, very beginning of the film, you can see one of our first shoots. And then after that shoot, she actually went back into recovery. And then we came back again about 3 months later after her management said, listen, she's doing much better, come on back. And she was doing better. And then we saw that things were taking another turn. So I would say halfway through filming, we started just asking ourselves, is there something else going on here? And a couple of the members of our team had family members with dementia. And they started saying to us and to the management, like, we think there might be something going on here beyond just addiction. Is there anything? Is there something we should be aware of? Are there doctors we should be talking to? These were conversations that were happening on camera, off camera, all the way through. And we just kept getting kind of stonewalled, honestly, by her team saying, no, she's fine. She's fine. She just had a bad day yesterday. Wendy wants to keep going. Let's keep going. And Wendy truly did want to keep going. So dementia is a very confusing, type of diagnosis because it is a syndrome of different types of behaviors. And I think looking back on the documentary, especially when her management finally, or a guardian finally revealed that she had frontotemporal dementia, when you go back into the symptom list, right, of what that is, you can see those behaviors, throughout the filming. But we just weren't connecting the dots until much later. And again, like her team was saying, she's fine. There's no diagnosis to be aware of. So it was very confusing for us, right? As it is, I think, for probably anyone who's close to someone with dementia. What is going on here? Is there a treatment we should be, pursuing? Or will it clear up on its own? And obviously, we now know that that's not the case, and that it did progress throughout the year that we were with her.
So in the process of the film, what were the discussions like of the filmmakers becoming part of the film? That's not something that often happens, and so I have to imagine that there were some very serious discussions about to what extent the filmmaking process was going to be involved in the actual film.
Yeah, it was a very conscious decision from very early on, to make sure that we were either turning the cameras on the producers or making sure they were mic'd and that we could allow their voices, to seep into the narrative, because there were a lot of questions that were going unanswered repeatedly. So it was important for us, for the audience, to hear those questions and hear that the filmmakers were asking those questions and are asking these questions, and these are the responses, we're getting. And there became like a very interesting and compassionate relationship, and honestly friendship, that evolved, between Wendy and our showrunner Erica Hansen and our supervising producer Michael Armstrong, who were with her. They're with her almost every day, whether we were filming or not. They were talking to her and with her, and with her manager Will Selby. So it just became really important because, like it or not, the filmmakers were starting to become part of the story, and their journey of discovery and exploration, we felt like was really important to share with the audience, because we didn't know all the answers. It seemed like no one around Wendy knew all the answers. Wendy certainly didn't know all the answers. So at that point, we're like, let's just be as honest and transparent as we possibly can with how we capture this. So we'll have those options when we go into post-production to allow that kind of, breathing room for the filmmakers' voices to be a part of it. And that they were, and they still are,
One of the things that I think the film shines a light on is this issue of conservatorships, which we hear about a lot in peripheries with certain people, but this, I feel like, really shined a light on it in a way that I had never seen. And you guys kind of being in the middle of that, did you consciously want to highlight that element as it was revealing itself to you?
Well, it was just revealing itself to us. We knew very little, right? We knew she had a guardian and she had been appointed it. We knew the situation that we were entering into because we had to deal with all the legal paperwork in advance, right? Of getting her attorneys and the guardians sign off. It wasn't something that was a surprise to us. We knew that this was the case. I think what was surprising to us was the level of care or lack thereof in the period of time that we were interacting with her. There just weren't a lot of medical people around, or nurses, or even a lot of people coming in the home with food, and checking on her. Her manager was there, Will, and he really, I think, cared a lot about her, but he lived an hour away, had a family, he couldn't be there 24/7. So it just became increasingly obvious to us that whatever was going on here maybe was something that needed to be, discussed and considered. And what does happen when you're put into a guardianship? We now know much more about this subject than we did when we started, because we didn't really anticipate this being the story, but it just simply presented itself to us. And we said, well, we can't look the other way now, right? Now we're here. This is the world famous Wendy Williams, and this is the reality of her life. Something is off here. And let's try to get the family back involved with her so they can help tell us, is this the way it's supposed to be? You know, is this the situation that we're supposed to be documenting? And I think the family was honestly as shocked as we were at the state that Wendy was in when they were finally able to connect her. Because remember, they hadn't really seen her in the 8 to 10 months, you know, that we had been filming, because they were in another state and weren't really being, you know, brought into her care or her guardianship. There was a big divide between the family and the guardian. So then we started leaning into the family's point of view on this and started to understand that they weren't happy with the situation and that they wanted to share their side of the story, which they had never really shared. And it, you know, I think it was very brave of them and brave of Wendy and brave of her management to let that story be told, because that comes with a lot of legal risks and, you know, potentially them being even further cut off from Wendy. So this guardianship issue is something that is a way bigger story than this film even is, but we hope that it shines a light, you know, and can serve as a catalyst for change for other families that may not have this platform, because families really are powerless, you know, in these situations. We were shocked, you know, how omnipotent a guardian is in someone's life once the court step in and appoint it. So hopefully, you know, Wendy is now in a better place and she is getting the care she needs, and the family is back in touch with her to a much larger degree, but they still have not seen Wendy since the wrap of this film. You know, what you see in the film of Wendy seeing her family is the last time her family saw her.
Yeah, there's so many just absolutely heart-wrenching moments, and I think no more so. I mean, we could talk about the trip to find the vapes, or, you know, but to me, one of the most heartbreaking sequences is the sudden and unexpected trip to LA, which, as you watch it, you're just screaming, no, this is wrong. And I'm curious, as filmmakers, how do you walk that line between, you know, knowing that something's not right and but still staying focused on the project at hand?
I think at that point you just really turn into fly on the wall, because it wasn't really our place to step in and say what's right or what's wrong, who's in charge, who's not. Is her publicist making these decisions in conjunction with someone else or not? And we were as confused as anyone why Wendy was in LA. It came as a complete surprise to the production team. So we had to scramble and actually bring another crew on. You know, that's our head of development, Pat Lambert, jumped into the producer's role and just went out with cameras just to kind of capture what was going on. And that is literally what happened, you know, that day. That's how things rolled out. All of a sudden there was a meeting with NBC, you know, that was happening, that, you know, we tried to get into the meeting, but if, you know, when NBC wasn't interested in our cameras coming into their pitch session. So we just kind of, like, at that point, wanted to take a step back and let the camera just capture everything. And of course, there's a lot more that it captured that, you know, we didn't put on camera. But I think the feeling that you get from that trip is the truth of that moment, you know. And a lot of people were surprised, to say the least, that Wendy showed up in LA and was taking meetings.
This film obviously has inspired a great deal of conversation, you know, and a very vast array of reactions. And so I'm curious, as the filmmaker, and you had to know that it was going to inspire those types of reactions. And so I guess now that there's just a little bit of distance, what have you kind of taken from those reactions, positive and negative?
Yes, we knew it would be very polarizing, you know, and that people would have a visceral reaction to seeing it. We still were having those visceral reactions watching it in our edit base, you know, and with Lifetime, and having lots of conversations about what we should show or not. But at that point, it really became a platform for Wendy and her family, you know, to share the truth of the situation. And if we shied away from the difficult moments and the heartbreaking, you know, moments that we captured, we don't think it would have been true, because those moments were real. They were happening and increasingly on a daily basis, and Wendy was declining precipitously, in front of our eyes. So if we didn't share that, it wouldn't allow the family to step in and have the platform they now have to seek change, and to seek legal recourse, which, probably will be the next chapter of the story is somehow them being back a part of her life. So it was a long kind of series of conversations between us, between Lifetime, honestly, Wendy's management and their family, and her family did see the film, before it went out to the world, because we didn't want them to see it for the first time on national television. There were no changes made, at all to the film after those screenings. So the most important thing to us was, are Wendy and her family in a better place, after the film, than they were before the film, and we think that really has occurred. And beyond that, the platform that this film has opened up all kinds of dialogue about dementia and guardianships, and we hope it can serve as a catalyst for change along those lines. There is still a law under consideration in New York State to really modify how guardianships are conducted and make sure that families can't be cut off from people that are in guardianships. So even if that is able to move forward, hopefully the film has had some kind of an impact, for other people as well as Wendy and her family.
Well, Mark, I just think it's such an important and it's such an important story and such a heart-wrenching, but I think significant story that needs to be seen. So thank you for that. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the upcoming award season, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders in the coming weeks. Mark Ford, congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony.